This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, President Donald Trump's former attorney says he lied to Congress. But will his statement make any difference in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into the president? Plus, she was raped and got pregnant and decided to keep the baby, but she's faced a backlash online for that decision. And a satanic organization complains that visitors are taking ornaments from their Christmas display. We're going to have all those stories and much more ahead today, right here on NewsWatch. We begin, though, with Michael Cohen. The president's former attorney once said he'd take a bullet for the president. Now he's cooperating with Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Cohen is hoping for a deal from prosecutors after pleading guilty to lying to Congress about a Trump Corporation real estate deal. During a closed-door session of Congress, Cohen says he lied to lawmakers about the proposed project in Moscow. He told them it was abandoned in January of 2016 before the Republican primary got underway. Now he says the project planning continued into June, deep into the presidential campaign. Former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski tells CBN News Cohen's lies don't have anything to do with the president.
Michael has his own legal issues that he's created. They have nothing to do with the outcome of the election. They had nothing to do with some type of fake Russian collusion story.
And for more on this story, we're joined now by senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon. So, Jennifer, how is President Trump reacting to this latest twist in the Mueller investigation?
Well, Ephraim, the president is saying, look, when I started running for president, there was a very good chance it was not going to work out for me. And so he says he didn't want to miss out on potential deals because he was going to return back to being a private businessman. And so, this morning he tweeted that that he put up zero money, zero guarantees, and he didn't do the project. And he says this is just another step in what he calls a witch hunt, Mueller's investigation.
Why are Trump detractors making such a big deal of Cohen's guilty plea here?
Well, Ephraim, before Thanksgiving, President Trump submitted written answers to some questions that Bob Mueller had posed to him. And so some observers thought that perhaps Mueller was setting the president up for perjury. But the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, says that in this instance, the president answered some questions about this potential Moscow deal and that the president's answers line up with what Michael Cohen is telling prosecutors. However, even some Trump allies say that while this is not a legal issue for the president, that it does hurt him a bit politically. They say that, remember, he was explicit on the campaign trail that he had absolutely no business dealings with Russia whatsoever. Now we know that up until June, the Trump organization was considering this real estate deal in Moscow. And so some of his allies even say, look, he probably could have been more transparent about this.
Well, Jennifer, we know the president is in Argentina. He arrived there yesterday for the G20 summit. What will he be working on?
He has a lot on his plate, Ephraim. One of the big headlines already is that he was scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has just arrived there for the meeting. However, yesterday he said that he's not going to meet with Putin. This is after Michael Cohen decided that he was going to plead guilty and, cooperate with prosecutors. And so that meeting is not happening. However, tomorrow, something we're going to be watching tomorrow evening, the president is having a working dinner with Chinese President Xi Jinping. The two men are going to try to work out their differences on this major trade dispute that is, causing all types of problems with the market. This, of course, started when the president decided that he was going to put an end to America's trade deficit with China. We'll be watching that closely to see what they can come up with.
A busy day and a busy weekend ahead. CBN senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon, thank you.
Thank you.
Life expectancy in the United States is dropping. Suicide and drug overdoses are behind the continuing decline in the number of years that Americans are expected to live. The Centers for Disease Control says overall, more than 2.8 million people died in the U.S. last year. That's nearly 70,000 more than in 2016, and the most deaths in a single year since the government started counting more than 100 years ago. Many deaths can be attributed to our country's aging population, but the death rate among younger and middle-aged people is also up. A big factor is the growing number of drug overdoses.
On a medical level, what we're seeing is with the overdoses, we're talking about one main category of drug, and they're called opioids. And we've heard so much about it. Opioids, people are dying from three main types of opioids: the prescription drugs, heroin, and now fentanyl.
The suicide death rate in 2017 was the highest in at least 50 years. Popular Christian artist Natalie Grant testified on the reality of modern slavery before the U.S. Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and she says she was honored to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves.
My daughters are living in a world where slavery still exists, where someone's daughters, someone's sisters, someone's niece, someone's granddaughter is being ravaged day in and day out. I commit my life to Proverbs 31:8, which says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed." I have seen those who are crushed, and I say that together we must do whatever it takes to give them justice.
We applaud her speaking out. More than 78,000 viewed that testimony. A satanic organization says visitors are taking ornaments from its Christmas in the Park tree display. The California-based group of atheist Satanists says it hung 140 ornaments and now they are quickly running out. Group members are pleading for people to stop stealing. Parkgoers say the tree should not be there in the first place.
I think it's not correct to put that here, and especially they accepted to have that tree here.
It's kind of ironic that there's a satanic Christmas tree just in general. I'm surprised more hasn't happened to it.
Last year, a tree sponsored by a different satanic group had its topper, a giant black goat head, stolen. Park officials say stolen ornaments, though, are not specific to the satanic-sponsored trees. The U.S. ambassador to Israel says President Donald Trump's decision to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem on May 14th of this year was historically significant. Ambassador David Friedman explained why in an exclusive interview with CBN's Chris Mitchell.
First and foremost, it was the day that I think the United States put itself on the right side of history. I would suggest maybe your audience might agree with me, put itself on the right side of God. It was the day that we recognized really one of the great historical truths of our time. The fact is that everybody recognized Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, but no one did anything about it. President Trump closed the deal. He sided with the truth, and I think that decision has now resonated throughout his foreign policy in all kinds of directions, and I think it was just an extraordinarily important decision for the United States.
Ambassador Friedman also talked about the Trump administration's upcoming peace plan, the growing danger of Iran, the changing geopolitics of the Middle East, and why evangelical support is so important to Israel. Now, you can see this full interview tonight on our Jerusalem Dateline program tonight at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel. Also today on the CBN News Channel, passing a new criminal justice reform measure is a goal of many lawmakers during this lame duck congressional session. Today on CBN's Faith Nation, we're going to hear from leading Christian author Eric Metaxas on why he thinks the bill should pass. You can see that on Faith Nation today at 6 p.m. right here on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, she was raped and got pregnant, but she decided against an abortion. Now she's faced online attacks for that decision. We're going to have her story when we come back. In the ongoing debate over abortion, we often hear talk about exceptions in the case of rape and incest. Jennifer Christie faced that emotional decision after undergoing a brutal beating and rape 4 years ago in a hotel room. She then made national headlines when speaking out about her choice to give birth and raise the child conceived during the attack. Unfortunately, Christie is now being harassed online for her courageous decision. Our Charlene Aaron brings us the story.
In 2014, what was supposed to be a routine business trip for Jennifer Christie turned into a nightmare.
The last day of this assignment, there was a snowstorm and work let out early, and I went back to my hotel. And this was not a place that got a lot of bad weather, and so it was kind of a ghost town. And I head back up to my room, and I had my hood up and my scarf wrapped around my face, and I wasn't really paying attention to anything that was around me, and I didn't know that I was being followed. And so I get to my room, and I open the door, and I kind of throw everything on the floor, and I turn around to shut the door, and there was a man in my doorway.
The man pushed his way into Christie's room, hit her over the head, and violently raped her. She passed out in the struggle, suffering a brain bleed, broken bones, and serious internal injuries. When Christie regained consciousness, she was no longer in her hotel room. Her rapist had left her for dead.
I was in the back of the hotel in a stairwell outside that led to the dumpsters and was wearing a scrap of clothing.
6 weeks later, Christy learned she was pregnant with her rapist's child.
You know, they gave me the little stick test first, and it was an interesting dichotomy of feeling completely shocked and also not shocked at all.
Christy, who already had 4 children, recounted the touching moment she told her husband the news.
And he just said, "Sweetheart, this is a gift. He said, this is something beautiful from something terrible and painful for us." He said, this is going to be awesome. We love babies." And I said, yeah, we love babies. He said, "We can do this."
My son is a reminder that love is always stronger than hate.
Since the attack, Christy, a pro-life advocate, has been sharing her painful but redemptive story. Earlier this year, after this video of her testimony went viral, she began receiving threatening messages from abortion activists. Someone even sent a video to her Facebook account depicting a woman being raped.
The other side just finds it abhorrent that I am, quote unquote, forcing, women to carry a rapist spawn. And, don't I understand that this is something that's going to be a horrible reminder?
Kristen Hawkins of Students for Life says she is not surprised.
We had a case just a couple years ago where a university staff member, Purdue University, started cyberbullying our Students for Life group and then threatened in online comments to rape pro-life women.
Meanwhile, Christy says her son is a beautiful reminder that good can come from evil.
He's just a wonderful kid. And he's been such a light. He's been such a joy in our family.
Looking back, she says God has been with her every step of her journey.
God is in all of this. And it's a story of beauty for ashes and hope and healing and grace. And I'm so grateful for everything that has happened.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Jennifer learned last year her attacker had been found dead, apparently killed by the brother of another victim. She is relieved to know he can no longer harm anyone else. Still ahead, he's lived through trauma that's changed his life. We're going to hear from recording artist Jason Gray, who says God has always been there to pull him up when he's down. We've got his story when we come back. Recording artist Jason Gray has a life story that lends itself to music. He's lived through life-changing trauma and a painful divorce, but after every fall, he's seen the hand of God pull him back up. I talked to him about his song and his story.
The hurt that broke your heart and left you trembling in the dark, feeling lost and alone.
You're, of course, a singer, producer, but you struggle with speech. What happened?
Yeah, well, I have a stuttering. I've had it since I was a little boy. Mm-hmm. It showed up in the midst of my parents' divorce, Nothing's wasted. It was complicated, as I was growing up, especially as I began to be aware of God's calling on my life, and I used to argue with him about it, saying, Lord, you can't make me your spokesperson until you make it so I can speak. And I don't know if you've had this experience or not, but when you tell God that he can't do something, it's kind of like a dare that he can't resist. What's lost will be found again. Very early on then, I believed that the story would be if I stepped out in faith and belief that he had healed me of my speech handicap. And that would be my testimony, And when that didn't happen, it was very confusing. Hope is more than you can bear, and it's too hard to believe it could be true. I would do a show, and people would come up to me afterwards and say how moved they were that even though I had a speech issue, that I was still doing this thing. And that was when I began to recognize that it might be a gift, you know, because our weaknesses make us a safe place for each other, you know, like when you are open and transparent about your imperfection, it makes me feel like, oh, he's not perfect either. That means I can stop pretending and I can actually bring my heart to a moment like that, you know.
One of the things you say about your project Where the Lights Gets In is that the previous 3 recordings were written in some of your hardest times, and this is a different type of project.
The current record, yeah. Well, I went through a divorce that I didn't want. When you're in the midst of something very chaotic like that, your mind wants to pin the blame, and so most people pin the blame either on the other person or on themselves.
Absolutely.
The albums I wrote in that season had a lot of pain and a lot of grief on it, you know. There's a quote I love that says, "Wisdom is healed pain." And the current record and the next one I'm working on, I hope that they are reflections of that it is the wisdom that is coming out of healed pain, you know. And so, yeah.
Looking to the future, you're working on a project with your son.
We just completed one, an EP called the Kipper Grace Sessions. That's his name. So he's 22 years old, and he's a producer, and he's making his own waves in the industry, you know, and doing great work and getting attention for it, you know. So I came to him, I said, dude, you know, I paid your room and board for 18 years. You owe me, you know. And so we agreed to collaborate on an EP.
You have a favorite song on that project?
Yeah, personally, it's the song that closes it out. It's called "Becoming," and it's about how you know we are on a journey that is about progress more than it's about perfection.
Done that with your son. That project is out, and then we've got some new music coming.
Yeah, I'm working on a new record. On this new album, I've been combing through my story and looking for things that my pastor or my mentor or a friend has spoke to me, moments when a certain combination of words changed everything. Looking for little phrases like that have helped me, that hopefully will help others too.
Coming up, a look at an animated movie that's a major box office success. We'll have a family-friendly review of Ralph Breaks the Internet when we come back. And welcome back to this Friday edition of CBN NewsWatch. It is the latest animated film from Disney, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and it's closing in on $100 million as it goes into its second week in release. We have a family-friendly review from Focus on the Family.
Hey, kid! Wake up!
Ralph, what is wrong with you?
Start churning butter and put on your church shoes, little sister, because we're about to blast off!
In the movie Ralph Breaks the Internet, Wreck-It Ralph doesn't see himself as a building-smashing arcade game villain anymore. He just wants to be a video game good friend, or maybe even a hero.
3, 2, 1, go!
So when his best pal Vanellope wants to spice up her arcade racing game, Ralph lends his big bashing hands to the task, and ends up breaking everything. Now Vanellope and the other Sugar Rush racers may be out of a home for good, especially since the part needed to repair the old arcade machine is way too expensive.
If I'm not a racer, what am I?
Oh, you're my best friend.
It's up to Ralph and Vanellope to venture into that vast, wondrous, wish-fulfilling wonderland known as the Internet. They'll be able to find this stuff called money and buy the needed parts somewhere in that special utopia. Yeah, the big, thick-fisted Ralph can be a bit clumsy, And he makes silly choices sometimes too. But surely even Ralph can't break the internet. This colorfully animated pic is creative to the max. It takes a few swings at cyberbullying and makes solid statements about the changing nature of friendship and the value of adoption. But along with all its silly adventures, Disney princess encounters, and fun Easter eggs, there's also lots of potty humor and snarky quips to contend with here. So I'll give Ralph Breaks the Internet a 3.5 out of 5 for family friendliness. For more on this movie, check out PluggedIn.com. Plugging you into the movies, I'm Cheryl Wilhelmy for Focus on the Family's Plugged In Movie Review.
And on this finally Friday, it is time now for your Friday Faithful, and I'd like to leave you with this thought. In fact, it's pulled from the life and music of singer Jason Gray. Know this, falls will come, but they are not fatal. Get up and live. In short, get up. If you fall 7 times, get up on that 8th time, because God has so much more in store. With that word, I'm encouraging you to make this a fabulous Friday and be sure that you have a wonderful weekend. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. Remember that you can always get more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. And we'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can begin doing that by emailing us at newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, on Twitter, and Instagram. Certainly hope you'll join us again right here next time. And remember, the news continues 24/7 on the CBN News Channel and at cbnnews.com. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye, everybody.